This is Prime Crime Network.
Meet Antoine Edwards. He's jailed on several charges after police say he orchestrated the robbery with his daughter's best friend to rob a Burger King. Harris-Brazell, 16 at the time, was a drive-through. She was fatally shot by a third Burger King worker who was apparently attempting to shoot Edwards during the attempted robbery on January 2nd. Milwaukee police had responded to a shooting at a Burger King location in the 5100 block of Capitol Drive at approximately 10:13 p.m. that night. There they found Brazell, who had suffered multiple gunshot wounds and was unresponsive on the floor of the fast food chain. The teen was rushed to the hospital where she was pronounced dead. Police say surveillance shows footage of Edwards pulling up to the Burger King's drive-thru window at which Brazell was working in a Chevrolet Impala. Shortly after 10 p.m., the recording next shows Brazell removing the cash drawer from the register. Edwards, who was brandishing a semi-automatic pistol, then allegedly got out of his car and inserted his upper body through the window of the drive-thru. Derek Ellis, another Burger King employee working on the night of the robbery, then opened fire in the direction of the drive-thru window from inside the restaurant. Police said Brazell was caught in the line of fire and struck by several bullets fired by Ellis in Edwards' direction. Subsequent investigations led detectives to suspect Edwards and his daughter had possibly collaborated to stage the robbery, along with Brazell's help. The father and daughter were both arrested and under police questioning, admitting to planning and carrying out the robbery. Edwards, who confessed he was the driver of the Impala, said he climbed into the Burger King's drive-thru window because Brazell was taking too long to hand over the money. Edwards' daughter also told detectives Brazell panicked and didn't immediately turn over the cash to her armed father, as per the trio plan. Prior to shots being fired, Edwards' daughter recalled Brazell screaming, "He's got a gun, he's got a gun." She said a few days before the incident, she, Brazell, and the defendant planned for the defendant to come through the drive-thru window and stage a robbery at closing time, when the register was likely to have lots of money. The criminal complaint said Brazell was usually assigned to the drive-thru window, and the defendant's daughter worked in the kitchen, so Brazell would be the one to hand over the cash. Edwards' teen daughter said the other Burger King employees weren't aware of the robbery. Edwards was charged with felony murder, contributing to the delinquency of a child resulting in death, disorderly conduct, and 2 counts of firearm possession by a convicted felon. According to court records, he was booked into the Milwaukee County Jail on January 15th. Edwards is now being held on a $105,000 bail, according to jail records. The 41-year-old has a probable cause conference scheduled on 26th of January. Edwards has yet to enter a plea deal, but if he's convicted, he faces up to 10 years in prison and a possible $25,000 fine. However, the man Derek Ellis, who fired the shots at Mr. Edwards, had turned himself in on January 18th. Ellis is the former Burger King employee who is facing charges of possession of a firearm by an outstate felon and homicide by negligent handling of a dangerous weapon. The complaint states that evidence was gathered at the scene, including video footage that showed parts of the shooting. In the footage, the shooter appeared to be firing towards an armed suspect at the drive-thru window who was trying to rob the cashier. The footage showed that after the shooting, according to the complaint, a male employee crawled on the floor collecting fired casings. The same male employee then met with the restaurant manager who opened the safe in the office. The male employee then put white objects inside the safe. Police interviewed the store manager. The complaint states the manager identified the male employee as Ellis, whom she has known for years. The manager told police, according to the complaint, that Ellis carries a gun while at work and had it the day prior to the shooting. After the shooting, the manager said that Ellis asked her to hide the gun in the safe because he was a felon and could not possess it. Allegedly, Ellis was convicted of attempted second-degree home invasion in Buren County, Michigan in 2014. Officers found a white .380 caliber pistol inside the safe, the paperwork stated.
And now, the update to the story.
The court will so find, based on your plea of guilty, the court finds you guilty of felony murder. A judgment of conviction is already entered in the record. Once again, as a convicted felon, you cannot possess a firearm for any reason for the rest of your life.
Antoine Edwards pleaded guilty to felony murder in the death of Nyesha Harris-Brazell. Edwards was robbing the Burger King at 51st and Capitol last January. Derek Ellis, who was working that night, fired several shots at Edwards, but hit Harris-Brazell, his co-worker and friend, instead. While Edwards did not fire the fatal shot, the law still holds him responsible for her death. Prosecutors are seeking 20 years in prison for Edwards. Sentencing is scheduled for April.
Prime Crime Network.
It was exclusive.
By the time Derek Ellis sat with detectives, they already knew what he had done. They only wanted to know why.
I can't sleep, I can't eat, I can't do nothing.
Now he wants you to know, too. Tell me why you wanted to speak publicly about what happened.
I just want everybody to know that I didn't mean for none of this to happen. We're trying to be there for everyone.
For Derek Ellis, being there started with working on his day off. January 2nd, 2022, Ellis's co-worker and friend Nyesha Harris-Brazell called out. Working for a friend was part of the culture at the Burger King at 51st and Capitol.
She called up and said she wasn't coming, but she ended up coming in.
And so Ellis did not take it personally when Nyesha did come to work later that night.
But she never called and said she's coming.
10:10 p.m. A car pulls into the drive-thru and the driver pulls a gun and demands money. And someone behind him recorded what happened next. A camera outside the restaurant shows the would-be robber speeding away. Back inside, a camera reveals where those gunshots came from. Someone behind a door pointing a gun at the drive-thru. But between this masked would-be robber and the other gun stood 16-year-old Nyesha Harris-Brazell. And while trying to defend the restaurant, Derek Ellis mistakenly shot his friend. What did you do in that moment?
I tried to go help her, stop the bleeding, and told everyone to call 911.
What crossed your mind when you saw Nyesha on the ground, though?
Hoping she was okay, that she lived.
Do you remember what the last thing she said to you was?
She was saying, bro, call my mama, bro, call my mama.
You think about this every day?
Yes, sir.
And what do you think about?
Don't tell her I wish it was me instead of her.
Have you ever fired a gun before?
No, sir.
That was your first time.
That was my first time and my last.
At some point, Ellis is seen crawling on the floor to gather spent shell casings. Then he and the restaurant manager, whom he was dating, took the gun and put it in a back office safe.
I was scared.
What were you scared of?
I didn't want to go to jail.
Fueling that fear was Ellis's criminal history. 2 previous convictions prevented him from legally possessing a gun.
I told the police what happened. They let me go.
You told them that you shot and you were trying to defend
I
the
never
store?
told them I shot, but I told them everything that happened. Besides that.
It was a significant omission, and Ellis was allowed to leave that night.
But I thought I was going to be gone for a long time, so I didn't see my mother.
You told me that you didn't tell the police the full story in your involvement. Did you tell your mom?
Yes, I did.
He and his mother agreed he should turn himself in.
I understand why you maybe did what you did.
Initially, prosecutors charged Derek Ellis with homicide by negligent use of a dangerous weapon. He accepted responsibility and took a plea deal. The agreement: plead guilty to possession of a firearm by an out-of-state felon. 3 months later came sentencing and a public apology.
I'm truly sorry to you
I really didn't meant for this to happen.
Ellis's lawyer and the prosecutor equally recommended probation, but the judge felt he had to add time in prison, telling Ellis, "You didn't just possess a gun when you shouldn't have, you pulled the trigger and someone died." The judge's sentence, 12 months in the House of Correction. Do you think the judge's sentence was fair?
Yes, I do.
As for the masked man in the drive-thru with the gun, prosecutors identified him as Antoine Edwards. Court records show Edwards tried to convince detectives he, his daughter who worked at the Burger King, and Naisha all plotted the robbery together. But prosecutors are certain Naisha was not involved. Ellis told me since his apology in court, he's not reached out to Naisha's family directly, but wants to.
Scared to even reach out to the family.
What would you say to them?
Right now, just tell them I'm sorry. I never meant enough, but none of this to happen. All I was doing was trying to protect her like a friend should.
And that is how Derek Ellis wants to be known, by his motive, not his mistake.
Antoine Edwards pleaded guilty to a charge of felony murder. Today, he was sentenced to 18 years in prison. Prosecutors say Edwards conspired with another employee at a Northside Burger King to rob the drive-thru. During the attempted robbery, another employee, Derek Ellis, shot at Edwards but hit 16-year-old employee Naisha Harris-Brazell instead. She ended up dying. Ellis was charged for having a firearm and was sentenced to a year in prison.
Thank you for watching Prime Crime Network, your source for urban and suburban and around the world news. Hit the subscribe, like, and the notification bell. And check us out on primecrimenetwork.com.